Tonight,
we could very well win every state in record numbers.
Voters hit the polls in more than a dozen states today for Super Tuesday. Will it mark the final blow to Nikki Haley's campaign as Biden and Trump inch closer to a historic rematch this November? Plus, Hamas's sex crimes on full display at the UN. We give you the latest on hostage negotiations. And
do you think that God can work through AI?
Artificial intelligence and the pulpit. Why pastors say Christians need a game plan for this fast-changing technology. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Millions of Americans head to the primary polls. Good evening from Washington. I'm Caitlin Burke, in for John and Jenna. Voters in 15 states, as well as American Samoa, are participating in Super Tuesday, a day when roughly 1/3 of the delegates needed to determine each party's presidential nominee are up for grabs. CBN News has been following this primary season closely. Chief political analyst David Brody is with us tonight to discuss what Super Tuesday results might mean for presidential hopefuls and break down some other races he's watching. But we begin tonight in Virginia, where White House correspondent Abigail Robertson joins us from a polling station. Abigail, Nikki Haley hasn't had much success. Is today do or die?
Well, Caitlin, results from today could be make or break, as you said, for Nikki Haley's campaign, and they could move Donald Trump one step closer to officially securing enough delegates to clinch the 2024 GOP nomination.
We could very well win every state in record numbers.
Trump has at least a 37-point lead in polling over Haley in each of the 15 states holding contests today. Plus, he's already secured 244 delegates to Haley's 43. Trump could gain enough delegates to be the presumptive GOP nominee by March 12th. It's also unclear if Haley will stick it out until then.
How much more losing do we have to do before we realize maybe Donald Trump is the problem?
Experts tell CBN News there are a few states where Haley could make a good showing.
We'll really be watching the Northern Virginia suburbs of Washington, D.C., the Richmond suburbs, as well as some of the suburbs in Hampton Roads and the greater Virginia Beach area to see, if those voters that are pro-Haley really come out and how they compete against Trump's very strong conservative rural base in Virginia.
Trump's already set his sights on a rematch with President Biden, as many polls show him leading Biden in a general election matchup.
Biden's conduct on our border is by any definition a conspiracy to overthrow the United States of America.
Biden has won nearly all the Democratic delegates thus far, except in Michigan, where he lost 2 via the uncommitted vote. 7 states have an uncommitted option on the Democrat primary ballot today. Today's contests come after the Supreme Court's unanimous decision forbidding states to ban Trump from the ballot, after Colorado ruled last year he could be kicked off for his actions surrounding January 6th. Trump thanked the High Court, predicting this will be an opinion talked about for the next 100 years.
You cannot take somebody out of a race. The voters can take the person out of the race very quickly, but a court shouldn't be doing that, and the Supreme Court saw that very well.
A major defeat in today's primary could lead to Nikki Haley withdrawing from the race. Haley is expected to watch the results privately tonight, and she has no public appearances or political ads booked beyond today. Caitlin?
Thanks, Abigail. For more, let's bring in CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, to date, Nikki Haley has only won one primary. Do you anticipate her pulling off any upsets today, or is this the nail in the coffin for her presidential bid?
No, Caitlin, let's be clear. It's over. It's been over for quite some time. It'll be officially over tonight or early this morning, tomorrow morning, if you will, when Nikki Haley bows out of the race. She is not committed to go past Super Tuesday, nor do I expect her to. I think it'll be over. I think the warning signs will come early tonight. Virginia will come in. Those results about 7 p.m. Eastern. Vermont also at 7 p.m. Eastern. Those are the 2 states that Nikki Haley could do the best in tonight. And what does that even mean, the best? The bottom line is, if it starts going south early for Nikki Haley, we will know early. But this thing is over. It's been over for a while. It's not Super Tuesday. It's Snoozer Tuesday. That's what this is today.
All right, so we've been talking a lot about the presidential election, but Senator Kyrsten Sinema announced today she will not be running for re-election. Are there any Senate races you're watching?
Well, the one out in California is really interesting. You know, Adam Schiff wants to be the replacement to Dianne Feinstein, out in California. But we will watch that because it's a long story. It feels like a Jerry Springer situation where there's, I don't know, you need a family tree. But the bottom line is that Schiff doesn't want to go up against the other two Democrats. They have a jungle primary out in California. So Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. The top two finishers face each other in the general. Schiff wants to face the Republican Steve Garvey. So Adam Schiff is literally putting campaign money, his own money, to promote Garvey so he can go against Garvey, the Republican, because he thinks he has a better shot. That's something I'll be watching. Also, Ted Cruz in Texas. We'll find out who his Democrat opponent is tonight as well.
Now, President Biden delivers the State of the Union on Thursday. What are you expecting to hear?
Well, look, I think a lot of this is not going to be so much the words that he says, but how he delivers them. I think that's going to be very important. Obviously, his mental acuity under attack really for the longest time, but definitely more heightened recently. So how does he deliver it? You know, how does he look? I think that's just going to either reinforce a stereotype or maybe give the White House a chance to say, hey, look, he's not bad after all, though. Let's be honest, every day we typically see something from Biden that makes you scratch your head and wonder what in the world's going on. So, or we actually kind of know what's going on, sadly. So, look, I think this is an important State of the Union only because there's a lot riding on it from a PR standpoint for the White House. As for policy, he'll talk abortion and other things as well.
All right, David, as always, thanks for your insights.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Turning to the U.S. southern border, while we often hear of the suffering taking place there, tonight we bring you some good news due to the good news. A record number of people are responding to the gospel. It's a result of a 10-city evangelistic tour by Franklin Graham, ministering to those hit hard by the ongoing crisis. Heather Sells reports from Eagle Pass, Texas.
The potential for this evangelistic tour is enormous. People of faith all along the border are looking for revival and have prepared for what it could mean.
I want them to come to know that Jesus Christ is Lord and that He is Savior. But I also wanted to bring revival to the church.
And it's a breath of fresh air with all the kind of negative news towards Eagle Pass itself.
Franklin Graham's Frontera tour is shining a spotlight on communities bearing the brunt of the border crisis, with stops from the southern tip of Texas to California. In Eagle Pass, firefighters are drained from recovering record numbers of bodies in the Rio Grande. And pastors here are well aware of the toll on state and federal agents assigned to this hotspot.
Our law enforcement officials are seeing things that they've never seen before. They're seeing things they probably only read about on a daily basis, and now it affects them psychologically, it affects them emotionally.
In an interview with CBN News, Graham said God prompted him to minister here.
This is kind of a forgotten part of the United States. It's very poor, this border area. You have cartel people who take advantage and smugglers that take advantage. And you've got just good people that live here that get caught in the middle of all of this stuff.
Churches in Eagle Pass, as well as other locations along the tour, have prepared for months with discipleship classes and evangelism training.
Churches are definitely coming together, and unity is what it's all about. That's what's going to bring the revival.
I feel like God is using it to awaken people's hunger and thirst and to cause them to seek after God like never before.
The ministry carries a gathering anointing, and we're believing for a harvest of souls to be saved.
Tonight, you can be forgiven.
So far, with 7 of the 10 stops completed, the tour is breaking records. Graham says he has seen the highest response to the gospel invitation in these communities of any tour in the last 5 years.
People are hungry, and they're hurting, and they're hungry for truth.
Graham said he's also deeply concerned about the migrants and the many ways the cartels exploit them.
It breaks your heart when you hear some of these stories and families get separated. Fathers get separated, the mothers get separated.
Eagle Pass pastors said they would welcome opportunities to minister directly to those coming over. It's often not possible, though, as federal agents quickly process and move them out.
People of this community really have no contact with these immigrants that are coming through. We see them, we know they're here, we know they're passing through, but it's hands off.
Still, Graham is concerned about how local churches are struggling, tapped out with a national crisis in their backyard and limited resources. He is calling on larger churches in Texas to step up and help.
I would hope some of these pastors would be able to come to the border and set up a sister church down here on the border and let it be a missionary church. There's a huge need.
The God Loves You tour wraps up this weekend in California, but for churches all along the border, the work is just beginning as they prepare to meet with and disciple those who've made decisions for Christ. Reporting in Eagle Pass, Texas, Heather Sells, CBN News.
Reverend Samuel Rodriguez is the president of the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference. Earlier today, he spoke with my colleague Lori Johnson about the border crisis and his calls for immigration reform during an election year. Take a look.
Why are you making this call for action right now?
Here it is, the urgency of now. 8 million illegal entries. Lori, that's the response. That's the trigger. 8 million illegal entries. And there are individuals coming into this country released by Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela. He basically opened up his prisons and they're coming into America. This is wrong. So we can stop illegal immigration. We call it the urgency of now. Here's what we do. Number one, we finished the wall. We finished the wall. We finished a physical barrier, a deterrent. And Governor Abbott demonstrates the fact that these deterrents actually work, a physical hindrance to coming in illegally. Number two, we do away with catch and release. If we catch you, we deport you. Not only do we deport you, you will never be able to come back to America, not even for a one-day Disneyland pass. In perpetuity, you're done. You can't come back to America. Number three, we go back to the stay in Mexico policy. If you're applying for asylum, you stay in Mexico on the other side of the border until your application is processed. Number four, we make it clear. You will never become a citizen in the United States of America if you come into this country illegally. Citizenship is reserved for those who are born in America and for those who go through the naturalization process legally. And then number five, yes, we don't engage the military to deport those that came in during President Biden and so forth, but we do incorporate through funding from Congress enough Border Patrol agents and ICE agents in order to find those that came in here illegally who are involved in nefarious activities, and we do what we have to do. Listen, it is a sense of urgency that drives all of us. 8 million illegal entries impacting communities, increase in violence, it is wrong. If you ask the majority of Latinos, they are in favor of what I just laid out. And I do demonstrate compassion by looking at the Dreamers that came in here, the Dreamers recognized by President Obama and President Trump, and we legalized the Dreamers, absolutely, immediately. But this is wrong. We can do this immediately.
Well, so you, as you mentioned just a moment ago, advocate for a legal status for these undocumented people. How does this make their lives, how does this impact them and also our country? How does it make it better?
So I advocate for a legal status for the undocumented individuals who have been here for 20 years or more, who are not dependent on government subsidies, who are not living off welfare, but are contributing to our society. They came in here 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago illegally. I understand that. They're not going to be citizens, by the way. Again, you come in here illegally, there's a price to pay. No citizenship. But we grant them a green card. They're not living off welfare. They've been here for 20 years. Their kids were raised here. But the 8 million who recently came in, I do believe that we have an obligation to address that. We need to even offer self-deportation. I'm breaking that right now on CBN. I haven't offered that publicly. I've talked about it privately. We need to offer self-deportation. These 8 million individuals who came here during President Biden's administration, we need to tell them, look, you need to self-deport. If you self-deport, you can one day in the future apply for asylum. And you coming here illegally will not hinder that application process. will not disqualify you.
So when did you come up with this idea of self-deporting?
When I saw what took place in Georgia, in Athens, Georgia, with that young lady who was brutally murdered, allegedly by that illegal immigrant, that undocumented individual, it broke my heart. That young lady should be alive today. When I saw the Venezuelan migrants beat up police officers in Times Square in New York City, I went, enough is enough. And as a Hispanic American who believes this, that immigrants are an amazing blessing to America. As long as they come here legally, I still believe that immigrants are an amazing blessing, economically, spiritually, morally, in every aspect. Immigrants are a blessing indeed, but they have to come here legally.
Reverend Rodriguez, we do thank you so much for your time and for your insights today. We appreciate you being with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up, as the humanitarian crisis cripples Gaza, much of the world calls for a ceasefire. The latest on the war between Israel and Hamas right after this. Welcome back. Time is running out to free Israeli hostages and pause the war in Gaza before Ramadan begins next week. After 3 days of negotiations, Egyptian officials say there is still no breakthrough in ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas. The deal aims to secure the release of more hostages and increase aid into Gaza. International observers warn Gazans could face mass starvation if an agreement isn't reached soon. In response, the U.S. made a second airdrop of food and supplies into the Strip Tuesday.
The situation for children, for women, for men who are caught in this crossfire Hamas is making inside of Gaza is unacceptable and unsustainable. Israel has to maximize every possible means, every possible method of getting assistance to people who need it. The United States will continue to strongly support those efforts, along with many other countries around the world.
Meanwhile, tensions between Israel and the United Nations are at a boiling point. Israel accuses the UN of failing to act on new evidence that Hamas raped Israeli hostages on October 7th. A UN report released Monday found, quote, clear and convincing evidence that Israelis were victims of sexual violence during the attack and that hostages are likely still being tortured in Gaza right now. While the Jewish state welcomed the report, it claimed the United Nations is trying to downplay the findings, and Israel recalled its UN ambassador on Monday. The United Nations denies these allegations. Artificial intelligence and the church, how emerging technology could bring transformation, next on Faith Nation. Welcome back. Artificial intelligence and companies that develop the technology have a trust problem. Globally, only 53% of people trust AI. That's down from 61% just 5 years ago. In the U.S. alone, confidence in the technology is down 15 points over the same time frame, with half of America initially trusting AI, and the number now dropping to only 35%. Republicans are the most skeptical, with only 24% saying they trust it. That's compared to 38% of Democrats. Still, as trust in AI drops, the technology is shaping more aspects of life, including how we worship. That's raising big theological questions. CBN's Brody Carter investigates how AI is transforming churches in America.
One of the questions we actually asked was, do you think that God can work through AI? And we found that a really large number of pastors say that God can work through AI.
The overall embrace of AI in the digital world means it exists where you might least expect.
It's everywhere. It's in social media. It's, when you get on Netflix.
And quietly integrating into nearly every aspect of our lives. Researcher Ashley Ekme of the Barna Group is exploring how U.S. Christians feel about AI and its use in the church.
A lot of congregants aren't particularly trusting of AI in the church at this moment. But pastors in particular are the ones who exhibit the most concern.
Results from the study found 1 in 10 U.S. adults frequently use AI. In the church, more than half of attendees believe AI isn't good for church use, suggesting significant hesitation or skepticism about its role in religious contexts.
There is nothing new under the sun, as Ecclesiastes would say. And God is not surprised by AI.
Brad Hill with Glue, a partner in Barna's study, helps connect people to local churches and sees AI as key to transforming the company's workflow.
We used to have to employ much more manual process to look at an inbound connection request and match it to the right church. So we've taken that now from about 3 hours down to milliseconds.
Glue is investing about $25 million towards implementing AI in the church, including research and development. And Hill says it's time for pastors to also put together a game plan.
It's not just churches and businesses that risk falling behind. Our government is also having trouble keeping pace with this fast-moving technology. Both the House and Senate are pushing bills that would study AI accountability and risk. For now, they've only collected pledges from AI companies to ethically self-regulate.
Meanwhile, the Biden administration wants $2.6 billion from Congress to pay for a program that would make the government's AI resources more broadly available to researchers.
Both policymakers and these organizations are equally responsible for them. They both have to hold themselves to the highest standards.
Dr. Subodh Kumar, a Temple University data scientist, sees the lack of regulation as a combination of Congress needing a better understanding of AI, while also allowing freedom for it to thrive in areas of national security and economic development. In the meantime, it's up to users to regulate and protect themselves, and most importantly, their children.
The parents are oversharing kids' information. And as a user, the best way to protect us right now is that put a control on.
Brody Carter, CBN News.
Finally tonight, showing grace in moments of hardship. That's what a North Carolina pastor recently did after a truck driver lost control, crashing a big rig into his church building. The pastor of Iglesia Pentecostal was at his home only yards away when he heard the commotion. He rushed to the scene and helped the stunned driver from the truck. While heartbroken by the scene of destruction, the pastor offered forgiveness to the driver who had just destroyed his building.
Tell him I say I love you.
A nearby church opened up its building for the devastated congregation. They'll be able to hold Sunday services there as long as their church is deemed unsafe. The pastor of the damaged church says he knows the Lord will provide. And that is going to do it for Faith Nation tonight. We will see you tomorrow.